Welcome back for another video. So the Game Week 4 deadline's finally approaching, and as we do every Monday, let's have a look at all the best players to buy this game week. Or if your wildcard's active, which players are the best ones to pick for your team? Let's start off with the keepers then. And Henderson's the second most owned keeper in the game besides Turner, who obviously won't play. And what I will say off the bat is don't sell him this week if you've got him and you were considering it. He's 4th on the table this week with 3.7 projected points, playing home to Leicester as well, who after 3 game weeks have registered 2.1 expected goals, which ranks second worst, only behind Ipswich, who have had a couple of horrendous fixtures themselves. Henderson's only 4 points behind Sells, who is the top scorer and 4.5 mil keeper, so you've not missed out on much so far. Last season was far worse when Pickford didn't keep a clean sheet for something like 8 game weeks off the bat. Something like that off the top of my head, and there are also others like 4 mil Areola that were doing much better. This week, Alisson tops the keepers table with 4.2 points, followed closely by Edison with 4.1, and then Martinez 4.0. Looking longer term, which is always important, especially with keepers, is actually Raya, who's slightly ahead with 19.3 projected points for the next 5 game weeks. Arsenal of course do have Spurs, then Man City, before 3 very good fixtures against Ipswich, Southampton and Bournemouth, and then a few tougher games again. In terms of Martinez, I do wonder at the back of my head now if Villa are going to cope with Champions League and other cups starting soon. They've not looked at their best yet, and over the next 4 weeks before the next international break, they've got 7 games, they're playing midweek every week, which makes me lean towards a Villa defender for 0.5 more cheaper than Martinez if you're going there. If you're very much a fixtures manager, then if we sort the fixture ticket by difficulty over the next 8 game weeks, it's actually Ipswich top. Muric is an interesting one if you want the cheapest keeper in the game that will play, only 4.4 mil. Good fixtures, lots of save points, and they managed a respectable 1-1 draw with Fulham just before the break. There's also Greaves as a 4 mil defender. I don't think anyone's rushing to buy Pickford for 4.9 mil, who are second on the ticker for the next 8. But we know what a streaky team they can be. Last season under Dyche that was the case, and overall Pickford had a great season with 13 clean sheets and 153 points. The other 4.4 mil keeper is Ramsdale, who was straight to Southampton starting 11 before the break, a 3-1 loss to Brentford though. They're mid-table on the fixture difficulty ratings here. We're going to flesh out the fixture ticker tool in the future with some more granular features like filtering by defence or attack rather than overall only, and also identifying the best rotation pairs. It's all free by going to fpl.page or search fplfocal in the App Store. Android's round the corner as well, which is good news. If you used the site already, you might have noticed a visual overhaul as well, which just went live this morning. I've been working on it over the break, I'm actually really happy with it. One keeper that's missing from this table is Verbruggen, who's purely missing because of his predicted minutes, which are currently low, having only returned for 1 game. We saw Steele and Verbruggen rotate under De Zerbi, but assuming that's not the case under Hurzeler, which isn't a managerial trait of his, then he's probably the best 4.5 mil keeper. If I bump his predicted minutes up to 90, then he's projected 17.4 points over the next 5, which puts him only behind the 5.5 mil keepers and Martinez for 5 mil. Now Verbruggen and Ramsdale actually rotate nicely. You get a run of Ipswich, Forest, Bournemouth, Spurs, Leicester, Wolves and Everton. Plus you get the insurance just in case Verbruggen gets rotated, but I'd be surprised. Moving on to defenders, and this week Trent and Robertson top the table, both with 5.2 points. It's certainly not too late to buy into Liverpool defence. They're comfortably top for the next 5 projections, and on top of that they've got 2 home games to Forest and Bournemouth next, and then Wolves and Palace away. I've been really impressed by Slot and Liverpool so far. They've found the perfect Klopp replacement it seems. After 3 game weeks, Trent's 1.67 expected goal involvement is by far the highest among defenders. Next is actually Milenkovic with 0.99 XGI, almost entirely coming from 1 shot. So Trent owners in particular have been somewhat unlucky not to have hit a double-digit return from him so far, given they have kept 3 clean sheets in 3, and he's been incredibly close to an attacking return. Dunk and Van Heck make the table this week. Hurzeler and Brighton have been really impressive as well for me early on. Brighton home to Ipswich next and then to Forest home. It is worth noting after those 3 they enter a trickier period where they've got Chelsea, Spurs and Newcastle. So if you are buying, then just make sure you've got a player you can bench him for when you need to. And then game week 9 they're home to Wolves before they've got Liverpool and City, and then it's a run of games where you can start them every week. If you haven't seen the wildcard video, I'll put that on screen at the end to watch after. The defence we had on that was Robertson, Dunk, Gabriel, Mosquera and Konsa. Konsa does make the table here with 4 projected points. He's also got 2 home fixtures. He's against Everton, Wolves, and then he's away at Ipswich. Munoz is on 4.2 points, and he could get a lot of joy down the right flank against Davies, who is incredibly attacking and pushes up a lot. Could get caught out of position. Ipswich have conceded 36 crosses down that flank, which is second most in the league. This week, some have got a really difficult headache between starting an Arsenal defender or starting Porro, who do face one another. It's very close, but I'll put myself on the spot and say I'd lean towards the Arsenal defender. They're likely to keep a clean sheet. Of course, Pirate is likely to get an attack in return, but I just slightly favour an Arsenal defender. So should we buy Lewis for 4.7 mil? A couple of price rises for him. Pep's held him as one of the best players he's ever coached, though he has paid that compliment as well as before. He has been incredibly good after 3 games though. This chart here plots non-penalty XG per 90 against touches in the opposition penalty area per 90, and he's top right on his own here. The Lewis pick really depends on what type of FPL manager you are. He's got big upside, but he will be benched throughout the season, even if it doesn't look that way after 3 game weeks in my view. He remarked himself, Lewis, he said, expected to get a few games at the start of the season due to players returning late from the Euros. And Pep has also remarked that the season really starts now for City, and these players cannot play every game, and Pep basically called the opening 3 game weeks pre-season. Between Brentford and Arsenal game week 4 and 5, they play Inter Milan, and they've got more League Cup and more Champions League to follow midweek before the next break. In a nutshell, if you get him, make sure he's not a player you're counting on starting every week. You need that bench depth in case it goes wrong. Let's move on to midfielders, and there's some big dilemmas this week for Salah non-owners. He's top this week with 7.8 points. Now Saka was the biggest XG underperformer last week, failing to score from 0.98 expected goals, but good underlying numbers. He's the 3rd most transferred out player despite returning in all 3 game weeks. Last season he got 1 goal 1 assist in both home and away fixtures against Spurs, so what's the cause for his mass sales? Well, a huge contributor will be Salah, who's joint top for points with Haaland on 41. The projections certainly favour Salah. Where it gets tricky is a couple of weeks from now, where you're going to be taking a huge risk if you go without Saka when he's got 2 home games to 2 promoted teams in game week 6 and 7. So many have gone from Saka to Salah for that reason. But there is the option to hop back in a couple of weeks' time, or you could try and have Salah and Saka through other transfer combinations. Eze is second on the table this week. Game week 3 was a lesson in patience. When a player's got good underlying numbers, sometimes they're worth holding even if they're frustrating you, and he finally came good with a 10-pointer. So could the same apply to Fernandes? He's 3rd on the table here, and he's been on fire over the break with a couple of attacking returns against Scotland and Croatia. We still don't have a clear update on Foden. He pulled out of international duty with illness, and he missed the last couple of games. De Bruyne makes the table though with 5.8 points. Palmer and Watkins were 2 other players that pulled out. It would be surprising if they're fine for game week 4, but keep an eye on what's said in Friday's press conference if you want to buy either, or if you own them already. In case you missed it, Palmer hasn't been registered in Chelsea's Conference League squad either, which is good news from an FPL perspective. No European football for him. They should of course make it out of their group comfortably, after which point he'll definitely be registered, you'd expect. Mitoma makes the table with 4.8 points, 1.77 expected goal involvement after 3 game weeks, which is very respectable, and is a good pickup for 6.6 mil. But prioritise Eze if you don't have him, only 0.3 mil more. Minte's the other one. He's only 5.5 mil for Brighton. He's got 2 assists so far, and he got a brilliant assist playing for Gambia over the break. Now Luis Diaz and Jota have both proved to be immense value after 3 games. Jota's on 4.9 points this week, and Diaz just misses out making the table with 4.5. Diaz was actually the biggest XG overperformer last game week, scoring twice from 0.61 expected goals. Even Haaland's hat-trick wasn't as high. They're super close, but I very slightly prefer Diaz if I had to pick one, mainly because he's got a much better injury record, but he has been an equally good goal threat, if not better, 1.8 expected goals to Jota's 1.6. However, for XGI with assists included, he's on 2.4 to Jota's 1.7. It's not too late to buy Rodgers either if you need a super cheap midfielder, still got good fixtures, and he's been incredibly unlucky not to come away with an assist or 2, if not for Watkins missing big chances. On to the forwards, and for game week 4, Haaland's top with 8.3 points, which makes him the favourite for captaincy this week. However, if you don't have him, Salah isn't far behind, he was on 7.8. So I'd only consider the Salah to Haaland swap in a niche scenario, such as if you've got Solanke and Salah, then you could buy a good cheap midfielder like Eze and swap Solanke to Haaland. I wouldn't do it for a -4 hit personally. It is scary when we don't have Haaland watching him bag 7 goals in 3 games, including consecutive hat-tricks. But let's not forget, Salah and Haaland are tied for points, and Salah's only got 3 goals in 3, with 3 assists as well, whereas Haaland's had to score 7 points to match him. Another popular move this week is Isak to João Pedro to help fund Saka to Salah. Now Pedro is second on the forwards table with 5.5 here, albeit Isak's just on 5.4. So the projections do have it as an overall gain, given that Salah's on 7.8 this week and Saka 5.6. It's going to be an even bigger gap in game week 5 when Arsenal face City as well, of course. Football is unpredictable though, and it could quite easily go wrong, plus you've spent 2 transfers. After all, Newcastle have got Wolves, who have looked vulnerable early on. Isak was actually asked about FPL over the break. The interviewer said, "Should people captain you against Wolves?" And he said, "No, it's much better to hear when managers have transferred me out and then you score a brace. That's a much better feeling." So I guess we've been warned by Isak here. Havertz is another forward I'm looking at strongly. Not this week for me, but from Game Week 6. However, he's by no means a bad purchase this week. I'm amazed by how low some opinions are of him, perhaps because of his time at Chelsea where he failed to impress largely. It's admittedly a trap I've fallen into before when you can write a player from your head and overlook a change in circumstance. In Havertz's last 17 league appearances, he's got 11 goals and 9 assists, so 20 returns and 17. What more can you ask for, let alone for 8.1 mil? Is Jackson another one that we're overlooking for the same reason? He's someone I've not considered at all yet, and yet he's got 2 goals, 1 assist from the opening 3 game weeks, and he's got Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton and Forest as his next 4. If this was helpful, don't forget to like the video and hit subscribe. There's more FPL content to come later this week. Thanks for watching and see you soon for the next one.